welcome to the Asset Revolution podcast, where each week your hosts from Arbor Digital provide educational opportunities for financial advisors and individual investors to gain knowledge in this emerging powerhouse that is digital asset investing. The Asset Revolution podcast is your connection to the future of digital assets and an opportunity for anyone to get off zero. Let's dive in. Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the latest edition of the Asset Revolution podcast. I am so excited to have my guest today, Diana Britton from wealthmanagement.com, to talk about an interesting, dynamic and narrative that's been playing out through 2021 and heading into 2022, which is all about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So we're going to get into a little bit of what an NFT is and what Diana's experience is. But before we do that, Diana, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much for having me. It's great. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I'm the managing editor of wealthmanagement.com. As Mark said, I'm just do a lot of writing and reporting. I've been there for over a decade. It's the old Registered Rep magazine, if any of you guys remember that, sort of the Bible of the wirehouses. But I've since sort of rebranded and really just been more of a holistic wealth management publication. That's pretty much me. I'm here. I live here on Long Island. I got 2 young kids, and I'm really passionate about my kids and just about writing about financial services. So, yeah.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're given you your background and what you've been writing about in the traditional world and who you write it for. It was interesting when, you and I got, and full disclosure, everyone, I was a guest, was a contributor, right? Source for an article you wrote on wealthmanagement.com for NFTs, which kind of spurred this episode. And I was fascinated by what you were learning from everyone else who you're interviewing, right? Matt Hogan from Bitwise, Rick Edelman from DAC FP, Dan Ayer from BitRIA. So I would love to kickstart this conversation. First is let's kind of define what NFTs are. So for those listening, you don't know what an NFT is. NFT stands for non-fungible token, and it's a different type of token within the crypto world that is unlike other tokens like Bitcoin or Ethereum, which are technically fungible, meaning you can create as many of them and they're not unique, right? And that's where a non-fungible token is unique through its cryptographic code, which makes it a great authentication or identification piece to assets, right? And there are many different use cases right now. The way that it's manifested into the world is through digital art and collectibles. And the reason is because it's so unique and truly scarce, and there can only be one created in its code. But I hope that sets the framework for kind of what we're going to talk about, and everyone can have that base definition of what a non-fungible token is as opposed to the others. So with that out of the way, Diana, let's kick this off. Tell us about why did even wealthmanagement.com decide to write and to give you the go-ahead to start researching and spending time and energy on NFTs?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of a tough pitch with my editors because they were very skeptical of the space and just, seeing it as more very speculative and very new. And, there is really very little way for financial advisors and wealth managers to manage these assets on behalf of their clients today. But my husband invests in it. He's had some success there and sort of, really gotten into these communities and discords where, people talk about these NFT projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was telling you this, like the first time he mentioned it to me, he was like, this rock sold for like $500,000, a picture of a rock. And we were just like, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds crazy, but folks are really finding value in this asset. And so he actually called up his financial advisor at Morgan Stanley and asked for his advice. What should I hold on to these NFTs? And it was a certain project that he was asking about. And my husband really had to educate his financial advisor about what NFTs are and how you invest and how it works, and what the use cases are of the technology today. And the advisor really knew very little about it. And at the end, he actually did sort of offer some advice and said to hold on to it and sort of write it out. And while I think it's good that he at least gave some advice, I just sort of saw that there was an opportunity to write about this for our audience, because they really don't know much about it. And yet I think that there is a cohort of folks out there building wealth through this investment. And so, like anyone else, they need financial advice. And so here's just some statistics for you. Less than 10% of wealth managers have any sort of crypto assets as part of their practice. Yet 49% of millennials own cryptocurrencies, according to a People Say survey, and nearly half of millionaire millennials own NFTs. That's according to a separate survey by CNBC and the Spectrum Group. So, I mean, it's the same thing is happening with the same thing that has happened with crypto assets, where it's growing, it's becoming more of an asset that people are going to allocate their portfolio to. I think the same thing is going to happen with NFTs. And so that's sort of how my story, got founded or birthed or whatever.
Came to life. Yeah.
But yeah.
I love that. Thank you for diving into that story a little bit. Cause I think because right now we're so early that it's like, well, does this even matter enough to write about? And when you're talking about it, especially a well-respected, source such as wealthmanagement.com, like when there's energy put out into, an area like that says something, right? And so definitely, and I was happy when we got to talk, because there's so much more to NFTs than just the digital art and collectible space, right? One of the things that we, are shouting from the rooftops is that the next generation of wealth accumulators, right? You mentioned that statistic, half of millionaires all own NFTs, right? And then not even just from an investment perspective, but when you look at what's happening for creators, for artists, these are potential clients, right? This is how they're going to generate their cash flow, their revenues. And it's just a completely new way. So if you don't even have to allocate to NFTs, but if you have a knowledge base of what NFTs are, how they work, and how you can potentially help clients when they need it, from a wealth advisory perspective, you can actually add value without even having to allocate. And that's a doorway into traditional wealth management, right? Because it's not just about helping investors accumulate wealth. It's also about helping them protect their wealth, right? Risk management, insurance strategies, estate planning, right? If you have a client, these investors who are, 100xing, 1000xing their investments, great. This is where you get to be the disciplined voice, have an education on what NFTs are, and help them protect that wealth, right? And then you're getting into the different generations as well. We did an education event with an advisor that we brought on for our SMA offer. And that's one thing we do. Every advisor comes on before we even invest any dollar. It's all about education. It's all about, getting your clients educated as well. So we did this client education event. And the funny thing is when we got to the ask us anything or just general questions, almost every single client actually knew about NFTs, and that's how they knew about crypto more than actually like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Uniswap. They knew about NFTs, and the reason was because they're kids. And when I say kids, I'm not talking 19, 20-year-olds. I'm talking 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds, doctors, just coming out of residency, lawyers just finishing up, passing the bar and having their, being 3 or 4 years into their, first jobs, right? they're the ones that are into NFTs, and they're getting their parents involved, and their parents get all excited about it. And then they're asking us about it. And it was just interesting. Oh, that's how you got onboarded into crypto and why you're at this event. You actually have no idea about Bitcoin or Ethereum. You actually know more about NFTs. And it was just such an interesting thing to learn. And this was in November of last year. So we're seeing this is actually a new way to connect with the household. This is a way to connect with the next investor base. I think with this generational wealth transfer that's happening for advisors, a lot of them are wondering, how do I get connected to the next generation? How do I get connected to the family and their networks? Here you go. you just spouted off. Did you find that other advisors in your research, did you find that others were kind of seeing similar things, or what else did you find in your research and as you were going through building the article?
Yeah, so I guess I was kind of set out to find out what sort of platforms and resources and investment vehicles were out there aimed at advisors and their clients that have NFTs. And what I found was there wasn't much. And so when I spoke to a lot of the usual suspects in the wealth management industry, folks that I talked to a lot over the years, I heard a lot of, most advisors just won't touch it. They don't know much about it. Clients aren't really asking about it. It's so early, and speculative. And so even like a large national RIA that I talked to, the CEO said they're not even thinking about it. And I was just like, okay, well, in my head, I'm thinking maybe you should.
So dive into that for a second. Why are you thinking that maybe you should?
Well, because I guess I've seen it firsthand, and when you're talking about kids, it's funny. I was, talking to my brother, who's in his early 40s about NFTs. He didn't have any idea what they were. And I was talking to him about Bored Apes and all that kind of stuff. And he, went back and talked to his son about it, who's 13 years old. And his son's like, oh yeah, I know what NFTs are. I totally know what you're talking about. I know Bored Apes. And it's like, that's, just really shows you that that generation is growing up with this technology, and they're very familiar with it. I mean, it took me a while to grasp it and to wrap my head around it. And so, I don't know. So I guess in my research, I kind of had to pivot a little bit and start talking to folks that were more digitally asset. That's not the right word. More native in that space, more digitally asset focused, like yourself. And that's really what led me down the road of really figuring out what is going on in this space and how advisors really need to think about it. And so that's, where I talked to Matt Hogan, and I talked to Gemini and Bitwise and Rick Edelman, who, has a certification program for digital assets, and they're incorporating NFTs into their curriculum and everything like that. And so that's where I kind of learned a lot more about what the offerings are. And I can go into that a little bit if you want, sort of what I found, what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, before we do that, I think it's an important thing that pivot was really important. It's funny because, you go in, wanting to go into another area, but then when you start getting into the weeds, it's like, oh man, there's so much more here. There's so much depth to more than just what we see on the headlines, right? Like what normal people see, and it's okay, right? Like everyone has their habits, has their resources that they use. Right now, what you see in traditional media is just when something sells for $69 million, and then the narrative is why the heck would anybody spend that much money on a JPEG, right? Like you see these consistent narratives that don't really go into the depth of what's really happening. And again, just to reiterate, digital art and collectibles are one very small space within the NFT space, right? Like we're talking, healthcare is going to be revolutionized by decentralized, NFT services, right? Like supply chain, data management, identity, right? Like a lot more is happening, and just the manifestation to start and getting everybody onboarded is through digital art and collectibles. And it was just funny because you mentioned the conversation you had, with your brother, and then, his 13-year-old knows all about NFTs. It kind of goes to this theme. When you start doing some research, you start realizing that just to have a base knowledge is going to be really important, because you're going to be behind the curve, right? And if you want to be a wealth manager that's going to be, on the forefront and actually able to service the next generations of wealth accumulators, having this base layer of knowledge is going to be fundamentally and integral to being able to service them. And if you truly want to go and say, we help the different generations of families, you have to live and breathe it. So I just see that just your story just makes me think about, you have to live and breathe what you say you're going to do, right? And that's kind of what we believe as wealth managers over at Arbor is, we do what we're going to say. If we're going to say we're going to service the next generations, hey, this is what's important to them. So we're going to at least know about it. So that's why I love the article you were writing. But yeah, let's use that as a way to now do our own pivot. And let's talk a little bit. What did you find? What were the platforms? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so one startup that's kind of making inroads in the space is called Magpie. It's run by Catherine Harrison, and they're beta testing a software as a service platform that allows advisors to view crypto assets and NFT assets of their clients and track and monitor their performance. It's kind of a platform for like collectibles as well, so whatever, if you have sneakers or I don't know, Pokemon cards or whatever it is. My husband was trying to find his old Pokemon cards from the 90s, but we haven't been able to dig those up. But anyway, so it's that's one way, and at least you can, as an advisor, look at those assets and track them for your clients. You can't manage them on behalf of your clients yet, but that's just one tool that you can at least have a conversation with your clients and add some value with these assets. There are some investment vehicles available for accredited investors. Galaxy Digital has a NFT venture fund. It's custodied at Gemini. Wave Financial Group has an NFT fund. I actually wrote about it on our site. It's structured as a 3-year closed-end fund. I think it's for accredited investors, or maybe it's qualified. But and then Defiance recently launched the first exchange-traded fund focused on NFTs. It's called the Defiance Digital Revolution ETF, but it does not directly hold NFTs. It just provides thematic exposure through publicly traded equities. And then also, this is something that popped up after I wrote the article. Bitwise launched a blue chip NFT index fund.
I saw that.
Yeah, which gives accredited investors access to major NFTs and art collections, including Bored Apes and CryptoPunks. So there you go. Matt Hogan's getting in there. What else? Yeah, I guess that's it, as far as what we have now. And I think, but I think that there's, like you said, there's a lot of applications that are going to come out of the technology later on, which will definitely impact how advisors do business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned a phrase, blue chip NFTs. So when you say blue chip, I think a lot of advisors or wealth managers are going to hear that and say, blue, how can you call anything in here blue chip? But to kind of put some tangible things to help them understand, it's really the same thing. Why would you consider a blue chip stock blue chip stock? It's the same thing. There are NFT projects that are being considered the blue chip NFT projects because of the trading volume, because of the community behind it, because of who is behind it, right? The influencers, the brand of it, right? Like there are blue chip NFT projects that will end up surviving because of those, characteristics, opposed to the thousands of NFT projects that are coming out just trying to do a cash grab or do a rug pull. So if you think crypto, just general crypto, is the wild, wild west, then NFTs are even further beyond that, because it's so new, and there's just so much, it's not regulated. It's the same thing as crypto, but there are projects and there are, influence. So Steph Curry, all of your favorite celebrities, all of that. A lot of people are using that to say, oh, well, this is a bubble. This is just telling me it's a bubble. more than saying, oh, I wonder if this is going to be the new way that brands are going to be built and influencers are going to signal how they are building, right? And that's one of the things I like about, that especially specifically with Bitwise, the blue chip is that, yeah, there's going to be some blue chip projects where there's going to be, this is the way fans are going to engage with the influencers and the people who they subscribe to, right? It's no longer going to be just go watch an Instagram video, go buy their products, right? Or go to the festival that they're going to go be at, right? Like there's going to be so much more engagement in building brands. So an example would be Steph Curry, right? So I'm a big basketball fan. So he just did a partnership, he broke the 3-point record, right? This happened after we did our conversation. He broke the 3-point record. So he partnered with Solana and FTX to do an NFT drop, celebrating, becoming number one of the 3-point shooter in history, 3-pointers made. So he dropped 2,937, I think was the number, NFTs for it, all on Solana in partnership with FTX. And now with those NFTs, he's going to offer a new way. And then he actually connected that to him and his wife's, charitable organization, the nonprofit they run. And so all that money was now put towards a charitable, cause, feeding hungry people, right? Addressing social issues. So when you're talking about, this is going to be a new way to fund, right? This is going to be new ways to raise capital, a new way to engage with the community who supports you and build that community even stronger. And so their plan is if you own that NFT, is you're going to get invited to, gala events or, investor events, or, you're going to get autographed jerseys that no one else would have access to, or game tickets to the Warriors. The possibilities are endless, right? And you just think about, wow, this is a completely different way that the next generations are going to be able to engage with their the superstars and athletes and, celebrities that they like to follow, right? And it was just kind of an eye-opener for me, just how deep it went. It wasn't just, hey, this asset is coming on, we're going to buy, sell, and trade it. It was, no, we're building a community. We have a charitable organization attached to us. We're looking to build this up even further, for the future. So it was just an eye-opening moment for me. Has there anything else that you've seen kind of go into this space where you think wealth managers or advisors should be looking to as you were doing your research?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, just to add on what you were talking about just now is, when you buy into a certain NFT project, it's not just the one image that you're getting. It is being a part of that community, and you get certain rewards for buying into those projects. They when the artist drops new projects, sometimes you are gifted new NFTs in those projects, and there are a lot of rewards. I mean, so recently there was these token drops where an NFT platform airdropped these tokens to NFT traders with a certain trading volume. So if you had a certain amount of activity that you, on OpenSea or whatever, they would gift you these tokens. And, obviously they're, they were worth a lot of money depending on how much trading volume you did. So it's just things like that. It's pretty crazy, and it's much more complex than I think we all think it is. As far as what else is out there for advisors, well, I thought it was interesting. Actually, I think it was this week or last week. You were talking about BitRIA. They actually just got acquired by Gemini. And they're a platform, they're an SMA platform, right? For advisors. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I mean, I think that's just goes to show that a large crypto company is making a big bet on the wealth management and advisor space. So I think it's just going to continue. And then you have companies like Digital Currency Group, which is another large, obviously crypto company. And they're in the process of launching a wealth management group to go, and they're looking to hire advisors and to service those kind of crypto millionaires that we were talking about. And so, I think advisors have to see that and kind of, try to act on their own as well, because those are folks are coming in and competing with them. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love
going on.
It's funny you mentioned that. I swear, everyone who's listening, I did not pose this. I didn't set this up or anything. We use BitRIA as our trading platform, our portfolio management platform.
Okay.
So we were, it was really interesting to see the announcement. We're very excited for them. We're very excited for Gemini to take the lead to say, hey, there's an advisor community. We're going to help, right? We're going to put the rails up. We're going to dedicate time, energy, and resources, because we've talked with other exchanges, Coinbase, Kraken, and they're not focusing. They're focusing more on the institution, which is fine. Like, I think there's the hierarchy right now that needs to be built if we're looking to meld traditional and crypto, right? Or as I like to put, off chain to on chain. And you have to start with the bigger players, right? And that's fine. Gemini is making the commitment to both, right? And they're being the first ones to kind of go further down the hierarchy to wealth managers, advisors. And they have a part, they bought Nifty Gateway a while ago, or last year, which is an NFT platform. So, there's going to be a way to incorporate NFTs to wealth management at some point. And that's where, again, to harp on this point, it's not just about the assets. It's also about the entrepreneurs and the creator economy that's being built, right? Your YouTube influencers are now going to move from YouTube slowly into more of the crypto, and they're going to generate revenue and their cash flows from this, right? And so you need to have an understanding of how smart contracts work. And then you're actually going to be able to build out cash flows and budgets for these new types of workers and help them manage their wealth. And it's just a completely new way. But if you just ignore it, or if you don't at least educate yourself, you're going to dismiss an entire new generation of workers and investors who need your help. So advisors, wealth managers listening to this, get educated. It's okay. And you don't have to allocate in order to provide value. Just get educated, and that's going to be value enough. Go open up those conversations. And I think another thing, and Diana, I'd love to see if you learn this. One thing we found too with clients is clients are fully aware of how speculative this asset class is. They absolutely know that I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm throwing a little bit of money at this. I have no idea where it's going to go. Like, it could go to zero. I don't care. But with throwing that money, they're making money. But there's this kind of fear of being judged, actually, what we're finding with clients, right? They know how speculative, and they see their advisors as these respectable, intelligent financial professionals. And they don't want to be seen as these crazy, degenerates when they go to their advisors and say, hey, I'm on OpenSea, I'm buying and selling NFTs. Like, what should I be doing? They're not opening that conversation because, honestly, they are afraid of being judged. We are finding that. But when the advisor opens the conversation and provides a safe space for clients to just talk about crypto and NFTs, you're going to find out a whole lot. And that's what we found at our education, what we find at our education events. When they finally feel safe a little bit, they start going a little off the walls, and you start finding out that my kids started buying, doodles or these rocks, and they now have a lot of money in this. And now they're kind of, doing a bunch of stuff. And that's where you now have the ability to come in as a disciplined voice. I think Rick Edelman has a saying, and I think I understand what he says when he says it. It's where he's like, we finally have some adults in the room in crypto, right? And I think what he means when he says that is that there needs to be a disciplined, rational thought process and voice to these things, right? Because everyone gets caught up in the psychology of it. It's just like normal investing, right? There's euphoria, there's the roller coaster of emotions that people go to, and the psychological biases that come with that. And it's no different in this space. So advisors need to be the ones to actually open up the conversation, because I think right now, very wealthy clients who are doing this, and their kids and their families and friends and their networks are doing it, they're actually afraid a little bit of being judged by their advisor, because they don't want to just be told like, no, that's just beanie babies and tulips. You're crazy for even doing it. I won't touch this with the 10-yard stick, right? That's a very dangerous thing to do. We feel like, why not be more open-minded? Why not open the conversation? Because you actually may develop a deeper connection with your clients, and then subsequently develop a deeper connection with the next generations. And that's what we see that as really the opportunity here for advisors and wealth managers right now. And the opportunity for actual providing investment advice, that's going to come later down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding, is that what you're finding in your conversations with a lot of others?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a lot of folks say advisors won't touch this stuff, and like are just, would never talk to their clients about it. But in fact, a lot of advisors are investing in NFTs and crypto assets themselves. And behind the scenes, they're actually doing it. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because almost anything can be tokenized, right? And it's just the process of replacing sensitive data with unique identification symbols. So this technology can be applied to assets that need protection and identification rights, and that can be a deed to a house or exotic cars, rare wine, employment contracts, royalties. I mean, I think that's another thing that advisors really need to be aware of is the future of this technology is really going to change the way they do business. And I think Rick Edelman was one who said he expects NFTs will mean an investor will go from having 15 to 20 asset classes to over 20,000 asset classes, and that's a huge opportunity for advisors to differentiate themselves, in this investable niche. And so, Rick Edelman said to me, advisors will have the opportunity to craft personalized portfolios for clients in a way never before conceived. And so, a lot of companies are starting to make moves in that space and to use the technology in different ways. So you have a company called Propy, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a real estate transaction platform on the blockchain. And, they sold their first real estate backed NFT. They sold TechCrunch founder Michael Arrington's apartment in Kiev on the platform. And so, more, there you have a physical asset that's getting tokenized. And so as that happens, advisors will have a bigger window into a client's financial life, right? And so that's what advisors, at least those that preach, holistic wealth management, holistic financial planning, are trying to do. And so as more of those assets become tokenized, they'll have more of a holistic view of their finances and be able to manage their wealth more holistically. So yeah. I don't know. I think that's really kind of what the point I tried to drive home in the article.
Well, I think you do a phenomenal job of it. And especially with that example, right? There are things happening right now beyond just digital art and collectibles with NFTs specifically, which is in the real estate space. And one thing we were talking about at Arbor is we thought actually that was going to be the first place where all this manifests, real estate, because it's just it's almost the easiest way. Like the value proposition for utilizing an NFT based platform or offer or service is, removing the intermediary, simplifying the process of real estate, of not just owning it, but then simplifying the verification, authentication of those types of assets, and then being able to fractionalize it and actually get a broader base of investors access to real estate transaction. When you talk about the big buildings being built, who usually gets access to stuff like that? Not me, right? I don't normally have the networks or the know-how or the people to understand to get in on those things. And that's kind of the revolutionary aspect. This podcast is the revolution / evolution of these assets, right? And one of the revolutionary aspects is the idea of being able to then, fractionalize your NFT. So if I'm an owner, I can fractionalize that and then go get investors. If I have investors who believe in this property and this property is going to generate real income, and I want to distribute that income or the revenue streams to investors, you can do it in a great. This is going to be an easier way to do that than the current infrastructure we have established. So our prediction was not right in terms of, we thought that was going to be the first manifestation. It was digital art and collectibles, but we still believed wholeheartedly, that's going to be one of the major places where this manifests sooner rather than later. And yeah, there's already, like you just mentioned, that company that's doing it. And there are many others who are getting in and building, right? So real estate. So, and I think another use case to talk about specifically with NFTs too is just, healthcare, right? NFTs can revolutionize, the data management of healthcare, right? Like being able to authenticate and verify medical records is such a huge problem in the healthcare industry. And when you understand that problem and how NFTs can solve it, it's hard not to be like, wow, let's get this going. So we know that there's building happening there, right? And then you mentioned rare wines, right? What is it? I don't know if you came across any statistics, but I think the last thing I saw was 20 to 30% annually of exotic rare wines were actually fraud, right? And one of the biggest problems in the rare wine industry is being fake. NFTs can drastically mitigate that number and provide a very big value to that specific. So anything that's usually difficult to authenticate and verify, NFTs is going to solve that. So rare wines is a great, I love that you brought that up and you found that. But anyway, I hope we're Diana, you're really doing a phenomenal job. I'm so happy to have you here because we're broadening and hopefully opening the minds of everyone listening. But before we dive into, wrapping this conversation up, was there anything else that surprised you or that you found that, that really took you back a little bit and was like, I didn't expect that in your research for the article?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I didn't expect, some of these large firms to say, I'm not thinking about this at all. That was really surprising to me. I think a lot of advisors are still think that this is ridiculous, and I kind of thought that too, at first. And how could a picture of an ape that's not even that, it's kind of ugly, be selling for millions of dollars. But I mean, we didn't really talk about that a lot, but they are, sort of using these digital avatars as social symbols. And, Matt Hogan talked a lot about that when I was interviewing him. He said it seems goofy, but, is it any goofier than having a $50,000 Birkin bag? Nobody kind of bats an eyelash at something like that. And, people have been using money to signal socially, for decades or, or maybe hundreds of years. I don't know. But anyways, I think it's interesting. One thing that I actually thought was funny, I'm just trying to find it. Hold on. There was actually an NFT project of financial advisors, a digital art project. It's called the Financial Advisor Club. And so they tried minting a collection of 10,000. This was kind of a sidebar in my story, but 10,000 meme inspired NFTs. And, they were trying to tie the GameStop short squeeze, to the NFT market. But they sold, at the time I wrote the article, they sold about 1,800 of the 10,000 available NFTs. So that's a little bit of a sign that it didn't pick up traction. But you can, if you want, you can buy a financial advisor avatar through this project, but probably for pretty cheap. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine how many things you came across in doing the research. So that's why I love that you were able to share a little bit kind of what surprised you. And yeah, I get surprised a lot of times when I hear we talk to, there are a lot of advisors also trying to get educated. One thing I will say is it has been encouraging, more advisors, more and more every day are coming in just trying to get educated. And that's really where you should start, right? So I don't want anyone to think that if you're listening to this, that you're behind or anything like that. You're not behind. It's a perfect time to get started. It's still very, very early. Don't feel like you're going to get judged, right? It's okay if you're an advisor, because I think that's another thing, right? Like maybe someone who's built their business and are a wealth manager who has commands a lot of respect and in the industry, it's a brand decision also to, put out there that, hey, I'm getting involved in this, right? So you mentioned before, a lot of people are doing this behind the scenes, right? So I think there's the difference between the two, because it's important to know that I think that there are a lot more people paying attention, but they're just not saying it out front, which is fine, but don't be afraid. It's okay. You're not going to be judged. You actually need to be that voice, that rational voice for your clients, right? Because the biggest value one of the things I learned as an advisor was that one of the major points of success for anyone who's built wealth and sustained it over time, over their lifetime, is not just their ability to build it and invest at the right times or whatever, or go into the right investments and go into the right investment vehicles. It's protecting the wealth. It's helping them preserve the wealth, helping protect clients from making wealth destroying decisions, as I call them. And that's a big value add. And that's all psychology, right? That psychology still applies here. And so there's a huge opportunity for advisors and wealth managers to be that calming, that disciplined voice, or from Rick Edelman, be the adult in the room. But I really appreciate you jamming with me on NFTs. And thank you so much for the work that you put in to that article. And I know that you have I know there's a sister article, right? Like on wealth management. Did you write that one too, or did you have a colleague that put that one out?
No, my colleague Dave Lennick wrote it. It's about it's really asking the question: are NFTs really art? And he talks to sort of some of the legitimate auction houses about their approach to NFTs. And he writes that NFTs being considered art, kind of offers a more solid proposition for attaching value to them beyond wild speculation. Although he admits the art world isn't immune to volatile speculation. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a different perspective and definitely worth a read. But yeah, I think just you make a great point. It's still early days in the NFT space. It's not something advisors need to dive into head first. Even Rick Edelman was very cautious about it. And but I think that there are some major companies in the wealth management space that are thinking about this and seeing that this is going to be something that that will come up. So for example, Dynasty Financial Partners, they actually did say, their CEO did say to me that, yeah, they are thinking about this. I mean, he didn't have much to say about it yet, because there's nothing, but it is something that they're thinking about. So, there are folks out there that are supporting advisors, the ecosystem around advisors that are studying up on it. So I think that's a good thing.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I guess, is there any resources or anything before we dive to wrap this up? Because I know you've got some other side projects you do. I know you have your own podcast. I'd love to take some time for that. But before we do that, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up the kind of our NFT discussion?
No, I think that was it. I mean, I think, just, continue following my coverage on wealthmanagement.com and for more resources. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that kind of wraps up the NFT discussion. I'd like to spend the last, 10, 15 minutes here. And if you're listening, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, because I think you're doing an important thing with your podcast. And so I'd love to give you a platform here to kind of talk about your podcast, why it exists, and kind of what you do to add value there. So, take it away. What do you got going on?
Yeah, so I launched this podcast a couple of years ago. It's called The Healthy Advisor, and it's focused on personal well-being and healing for the financial services space. And I've been covering the wealth management industry for more than a decade, and I was sort of looking out at the landscape of the coverage, and seeing that it was a lot of focus on business development and practice management, and how do you do M&A and all that other kind of stuff, marketing. There wasn't a whole lot around personal development, and I think that I've interviewed some doctors and psychiatrists that kind of specialize in the financial services area, and they say that advisors are more stressed out than a lot of other folks in other professions. They're more prone to stress. They're more prone to obesity, addiction, things like that. Bad coping mechanisms. And so I really felt like this was the podcast was something that was needed. Something that was funny was I a couple of years ago, I wrote an article about SNL sketches that had portrayals of financial advisors over the years. And a lot of those portrayals of like stockbrokers or financial advisors on SNL, the advisor was jumping out of a window. And so I'm sorry, my phone's on. And so it's supposed to be funny, but I think that there's some truth to that, because of how stressful this job is. And so I kind of set out to have folks come on and talk about their struggles, their personal development issues. But I didn't want to just sort of throw problems out there. I wanted to have people who have kind of come out the other side and could share how they came out the other side and how they found healing. And so that's really what the podcast is about. And so, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for taking a minute or two to kind of describe that. I'd love for you to kind of maybe share, have there been any like specific learnings? I love that you not only bring people on to talk about issues, but also solutions. So do you have anything that you'd want to share real quickly there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, some of the, I guess some of the learnings have been, it's kind of really taught me personally a lot about just life and sort of learning to appreciate what you have. And, because I've had a lot of folks come on that have had, near-death experiences or, bad illnesses that they've come out from, and, really thought about what's important in their life, and tried to take those experiences and live their lives in a more meaningful and a different way than they did before. And so I think that's one thing. I think everybody kind of knows what what the healthy things are, the healthy coping mechanisms are, diet and exercise, getting outside. I don't know that those are like secrets that we're revealing here or anything, but I did have somebody come on recently who was she's actually a health consultant that works with financial advisors. That'll be the next podcast. And she was just talking about simple things like standing up more during the day, and just getting out from your desk a little bit more often than you usually do. And I think time management, I think, is another thing that that we could all work on, right? Yeah, I guess those are just a few of the things. I mean, a lot of folks have kind of their own spiritual journeys as well, that their faith that kind of gets them through these hard times. But those are some common threads.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on to tell us a little bit more about it and share a little bit about the learnings. It's something I'm passionate about, especially being in the industry now for almost 10 years. Haven't quite hit that decade mark yet. But I'm a big mental health advocate as well. And especially when you learn and you grow in financial services or just in finance in general. And, for me, I quote unquote, cut my teeth in the New York, New Jersey market, right? So that's where I started my financial advisor journey, working Merrill Lynch, then to, bigger discount brokerages at Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade. So I've seen a lot. And then now I'm in the independent space. So it's been an interesting learning journey from a, mental and physical health standpoint. And I think one thing that gets lost is, I think advisors really, and I think this is becoming more prevalent for everyone when they come into the industry, right? It's a big deal when a family entrusts you with their wealth, right? Because money is the number one thing that causes anxiety and stress in just everyday people's life, myself included, advisors included, right? Like, so when you take on not just your own money, anxiety, money pressures and your family pressures, and you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to commit and take on the responsibility of 200 plus families as well. It's a big deal. And that weighs a lot on the mind, right? For those that really care, right? I'm speaking more to people who I guess may be empathetic to this element of the financial advisory, wealth advisory business. It's a big deal. And, whether you don't see it manifest physically in sickness or in feeling ways, there are things that happen underneath the surface. And I love that you've brought on, other professionals, health consultants that kind of help advisors dig into those things. And then it's very simple pieces and coping mechanisms that can help with a lot of those things. So thank you for coming on. I wanted to give it a chance to live and breathe on this podcast because it's an important message to get out there. And I think it's important to say to, especially in an industry that's been very male dominated with certain toxic male driven, characteristics, it's okay. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to bring it up. It's okay to go seek help. And honestly, I'm a big, I was a professional tennis player and coach prior to my financial life. And it is just the same as having a full team of coaches and support system that give you your diet, give you your mental, your strategic, your training, right? You have 5 different, I would say, health experts helping you when you're a professional athlete. If you're a professional advisor, it's okay to have those professionals helping you in those aspects. That's only going to help you perform better and bring value and service to your clients. And you're going to show up every day in a full and meaningful way for them. And that's what really is the important thing. That's what will allow you to do. And I think that's what when I listen to your episodes on the podcast, I feel I can do that better. And that's where, again, for me, thank you so much for doing that podcast and seeing that need after covering the wealth management space for so long and then putting it out there because it is a big decision. So thank you for taking that responsibility.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for talking about it. I think, I think that there is sort of this idea in this industry or this, I don't know, just a cultural thing where folks feel like they have to like die at the desk, and they have to work, so hard and build up such a big book of business, and you got to keep prospecting and it doesn't have to be that way, and so I'm hoping that will bring more awareness to those issues.
Yeah, I completely remember, like, if I wasn't getting $20 million of advisory business a year, it's like, what are you doing with yourself? And it's just such an interesting, like, when you talk about building a sustainable business and one that can, continue to scale and grow and you can continue to add value, it's like, are we really, championing the right things, right? Is it really the most healthy way to be approaching advising clients is by continuously, being on that wheel. And I'm sure a lot of advisors are listening to this and resonating with this, and it's okay, everybody listening. And please go listen to our podcast. Diana, take the last couple minutes now. We're wrapping this up. Where can people find you, not just for the podcast, but wealthmanagement.com, for any of the other articles on NFTs or anything crypto related, give everyone the spiel. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, my podcast is, on all major podcast platforms, and I think wealthmanagement.com is the best place to find me, but also I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, definitely connect with me. I'd love to get to know you all.
All right, you heard it here. We'll put all of those links into the show notes for y'all to be able to connect with Diana quickly and efficiently. Diana, again, thank you so much for joining us and talking about two very important topics to the wealth advisory space. Appreciate all of the work you do, and keep pushing along. We'll be right alongside you. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining, and we'll see you on the next edition. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We appreciate you listening to this edition of the Asset Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Marc Nichols. Please don't forget to let us know how you like the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen. For more downloadable digital asset resources and educational opportunities, please visit us at arbordigital.io. We are here to help you get off zero safely and securely. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to tell someone you care about them. Cheers.
We are financial advisors. However, we are not your financial advisor, unless you're under contract with or actively speaking with Arbor Capital Management or Arbor Digital, a division of Arbor Capital Management. This podcast is just that, a podcast. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice. If you have individual questions, please reach out.